Here's a question. Would you ever expect a barefoot hippie that refused to shower and lived on vegetables to become one of the NBA's greatest big men? Yeah, me neither. But that was Bill Walton. He was a lifelong vegetarian, anti-war protester, and die-hard Grateful Dead fan who somehow made it to more than 800 of their concerts. At one point, he was even being investigated by the CIA for suspected Marxist ties. And yet, while living like that, he still dominated basketball at every level. With his passing skills being compared to that of Nikola Jokic, he managed to win 2 NCAA titles, 2 NBA championships, a finals MVP, and even a league MVP. But how did he do it? How did a stinky hippie become one of the most gifted big men in basketball history? And why was he followed by the CIA? To find out, we have to go back to the 1960s in San Diego, California. William Theodore Walton III, or better known simply as Bill, began his life faced with many struggles. He was born with structural issues in his feet, as well as battling a speech impediment, resulting in Walton growing up shy and introverted. Yet, the lanky redhead would eventually find a place where he felt safe.
I was a very reserved young boy with a big nose and a horrible speech impediment.
Yeah, I remember a lot of you from last year. Yeah, what I'm going to tell you right now is like our schedule for today, all right?
Found safety, found sanctuary, found peace, freedom, and a way to express myself through basketball.
But it wasn't just on the court where his love for basketball grew, as laying in bed at night, flicking through stations on his AM/FM radio, Bill discovered a voice that would change his life forever.
Hello again, everybody, from high above the western sideline in the world's most beautiful sports theater, the Fabulous Forum. I'm Chick Hearn.
Walton had found Chick Hearn and the Los Angeles Lakers. But it wasn't his current home state NBA franchise that was his favorite. In fact, he preferred their rivals, the Boston Celtics, and their superstar, Bill Russell.
I was a Celtics fan all my life, and I loved that style, that fast break style, the guys pushing it up, racing the ball up the court. I just have many memories of as a kid of Russell grabbing that rebound and kicking the outlet pass out to Havlicek or Sam Jones or Casey Jones, and them just pushing the ball up the court on that parquet floor and shooting those little bank shots.
However, it wasn't until the age of 13 when Walton would actually get to witness the Boston Celtics playstyle with his own eyes. Because whilst at a friend's house, he sat in awe watching the UCLA Bruins decimate the Michigan Wolverines in the 1965 NCAA Finals using the exact style that he imagined whilst listening to Chick Hearn dissect his idol. Bill Walton now knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life. Yet, just 1 year later, that dream would take a tragic turn.
My game changed so much when I was 14 because I tore up my knee, had the first of 37 orthopedic operations at that point, but everything changed and I just focused on rebounding and defense. Bill Russell was my favorite player ever, on and off the court.
Inspired by Russell, Walton's shift in playstyle, plus skyrocketing to 6'11", not 7 foot by the way, because according to Bill Walton, 7 foot is weird, saw the San Diego native not only overcome his injury, but begin to truly dominate. Helix High School would win back-to-back state championships in their stars' junior and senior seasons, and their leader had incredibly achieved his dream. Bill Walton was set to become a UCLA Bruin. But what Bruins head coach John Wooden said during his first practice truly shocked Walton. He said, "Make sure to subscribe to Out of Bounds?" And Bill was like, "What's an out of bounds?"
If the other team is back defensively and dug in, and it's a setup play, everybody's holding their breath, and he goes, if Bill Walton and Jamal Wilkes don't get the ball every single time, the rest of you guys are coming out. and all the guys, Greg and Larry and Henry, their faces just dropped, And Jamal and I go, yeah, this is very nice. I can buy into this team concept.
Backed by his new leader, the now 20-year-old simply continued his domination from high school. In fact, after Bill dropped 24 points and pulled down 20 rebounds against Florida State in the NCAA Finals, resulting in UCLA winning their 6th national championship in a row, the sophomore, after earning College Player of the Year and Most Outstanding Tournament Player, had an incredibly bright future. However, during the offseason, Bill Walton's life would take a massive turn.
I grew up in an environment where I was encouraged by my parents and by my coaches to question authority, to think for myself and to have an opinion.
Why were we fighting in Vietnam? The lies, the deceit, the greed, the crony capitalism, the war profiteering. What are we doing out there?
One of the saddest days for Coach Wooden had to have been the day he came down and had to bail me out of jail after I got arrested in the anti-Vietnam War protests. He said, Bill, I know you feel very strongly about this, but I just don't think that you getting arrested and taking part in these demonstrations is what it's all about. I think you should write letters. And I scripted this letter to President Nixon, and I requested that he resign. Coach Wooden, he was so mad, but he looked up at me with those sad, soft eyes. He said, Bill, I can't sign this. And you're not going to send this in, are you, Bill? And I said, yeah, Coach, I'm sending this in. Well, I sent it in, and sure enough, Nixon resigned. It was unbelievable. Wooden was right, as always.
After Walton and Wooden reconciled their differences, and Bill complied with John's strict hair rules, the duo continued their winning ways during Walton's junior campaign. Plus, their local NBA team, the Lakers, would often visit UCLA and battle against the Bruins in practice.
And they treated us like we were on the Lakers. They would come to our games, we would go to their games, we'd go to their practices, they'd come to our practices. Coach Wooden, Bill Sharman, Casey Jones, just like this. It was just so fantastically fun, but that's all we knew.
Not only would Bill form a strong bond with Lakers star center Wilt Chamberlain, but he would also eclipse his idol's long-standing collegiate win streak, snapping Bill Russell's University of San Francisco's 60 wins in a row after a battle against Notre Dame. Yet, this wasn't even the most insane thing that happened in Bill's junior year. March 26, 1973. Driven to see his school win their 7th title in a row, Bill Walton was literally unguardable. Nothing, and I mean nothing, rival Memphis State could do would slow the San Diego native down. In truth, neither Walton scoring 44 points nor winning his 2nd championship in a row were the most impressive part of this evening. No, that belonged to something that may never be achieved again.
Has now made, and get this, 21 out of 22 field goal attempts tonight.
However, this is where everything started to head downhill for Bill Walton. As on January 7th, 1974, during his university's 85th victory in a row, their now 2-time Collegiate Player of the Year tragically broke 2 bones in his spine. Yet, somehow, some way, Walton returned just 11 days later, donning an intensive back brace as they were set to face the number 2 ranked team in the nation, Notre Dame. But tragically, even with the heroic last-minute return of their on-court leader and holding an 11-point lead with 3 minutes remaining, this happened.
Notre Dame 71, UCLA 70 with 6 seconds left. Into Walton, he can't score. Cernovich, Myers, Humiliated, it's all over. Notre Dame has won the game. The longest winning streak in collegiate sports history has ended.
I have not gotten over it. I will never get over it. I wake up with it every day.
Yet, this was only the beginning of the end. March 23rd, 1974, UCLA, facing off against NC State, was just 1 victory away from earning the right to battle for their 8th banner in a row. But NC State simply outmatched UCLA. Not only would State overcome multiple double-digit deficits, but forced 2 overtimes in which the Bruins would be sent back to California, having their 34-game March Madness tournament win streak destroyed. Bill Walton was devastated. Yet, the distraught 22-year-old had no time to reflect upon his failures, because the NBA, specifically the Portland Trailblazers, who somehow won the coin flip after Walton informed NBA Commissioner Larry O'Brien that he wouldn't be entering the league if the Philadelphia 76ers won the toss, was calling. with the Blazers choosing the big redhead #1 overall and Bill receiving the largest contract in NBA history at $1 million, which stipulated that the franchise had no control over his appearance. Walton was ready to embark on a brand new journey.
I'm just going to come in here and play basketball to the best of my ability, and whatever happens from there is, I guess, what you call history. I don't know.
But with his recent injury woes, could he even last a full 82-game NBA season? And could a player like Walton, who copied his game after now long retired stars such as Bill Russell, really succeed in the league? After spending time becoming acclimated with Portland through the constant riding of his bike, connecting with nature,
I saw these buried and had to stop.
and developing an understanding of the local Native American heritage,
Your name, Indian name now, is Yalap. And the meaning of the name is a generous friend.
Bill was ready to begin his domination of the NBA. However, despite beginning his career much as the Blazers hoped he would, averaging 12.8 points, 12.6 rebounds, 4.8 assists, and 2.4 blocks per night, problems in his left foot and ankle were worsening throughout the 1974-1975 NBA season. A tragic truth, which saw Walton's rookie campaign come to an abrupt end in February. To make matters worse for Bill, Trailblazer doctors simply failed to correctly diagnose his injury. Because Walton's problem stemmed from misaligned feet, not a direct sprain or tear, Portland's medical staff never discovered the root cause. Instead, they blamed Bill's diet,
The food situation, are you off the vegetarian diet or are you still?
Never.
No?
and hippie lifestyle for the issues. However, Bill's life was only continuing to nosedive. Because his roommates and friends, Jack and Mickey Scott, were suspected of helping the Symbionese Liberation Army.
The SLA is the people's army and we fight in their interests. The SLA will never compromise.
An American extremist terrorist organization to kidnap Patty Hearst, the granddaughter of newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst.
What about your friends, the Scots? What's their situation now? Are they happy? Are they unhappy? Or do they have any thoughts on the situation?
With the sudden disappearance of the pair, the CIA shifted their focus of their investigation towards their housemate, William Theodore Walton III. Bill's phone was tapped, his mail opened and read. He was trailed relentlessly by armed agents, and anyone he spoke to received the same treatment. Couple this with the constant lower body pain Walton lived with, and the San Diego native was ready to quit the NBA. Yet, an old friend sent him a copy of his recently published book. Bill devoured its contents and came to the realization that Chamberlain, another big man Walton idolized, had also been through many of the same issues he was currently battling. But while these words reassured Walton and saw him not only remain in the NBA, but continue to dominate during his sophomore season, scoring 30 or more in 5 games, plus averaging 13.4 rebounds, Bill still faced constant injury problems. Only this time, they had spread throughout his body. For example, in one battle against the Chicago Bulls, Bill was undercut and broke his left wrist, only to be sent back out in a splint and have his right hand fingers dislocated shortly after. To make things even worse, with the Blazers fast approaching the franchise's first ever playoff berth, they continued to push their rising star. Not even an intense ankle injury allowed Walton to rest. No, Portland doctors just injected him with painkillers and sent him back out, only ruling him out for the rest of the season when they performed an X-ray after the game, which revealed that their sophomore hadn't suffered a small sprain, but rather a clean break of his fibula bone. With the ex-UCLA star only appearing in 51 games during the 1975-1976 season, everything seemed to be going downhill. However, something huge was on the horizon. With the American Basketball Association, or ABA, merging with the NBA during the 1976 offseason, Portland saw an opportunity. Because during the ABA dispersal draft, Oregon's NBA franchise chose dominant guard Maurice Lucas, and shortly after, replaced their head coach with Jack Ramsey, a leader who held many of the same principles and ideas as John Wooden. Combine this with the election of Jimmy Carter, who resolved Bill Walton's alleged involvement with the SLA, and the now third-year NBA players' intensive off-season training at LaPrince's gym, and with Portland's professional soccer team, the Hippie player was ready to compete for an NBA championship in the 1976-1977 season.
When everything is going right for us, which obviously is not going to happen every game, but, when it does happen, it's just hard to explain, but everybody at once seems to be, on the same wavelength. Everybody was, right in there together, and it was not only, excellent basketball being played, it was excellent human relations, off the floor as well. I'm just, very glad that I could be a part of that.
Walton's dominance not only saw his Blazers finally having the playoffs in their sights, but becoming a cover athlete for Sports Illustrated magazine, in which they would share that the Blazer star showered as often as he cut his hair. Anyway, thanks to the 24-year-old NBA player's near MVP winning performances throughout the season.
I'm not the type of player that you just give the ball to and get out of my way and I make one-on-one moves. That's not the type of game I play. I start my game with my defense, and offensively my game is based on movement and teamwork and passing the ball around.
Portland, for the first time in franchise history, had made the playoffs. Therefore, the Blazers set a new goal, the 1977 NBA Championship. But could this ragtag team with an injury-prone Hippie center really get it done? April 15th, 1977. After easily disposing of the lowly Chicago Bulls during their first battle, Walton was locked in on advancing into the second round. Yes, first round series used to be best of 3. However, despite dominating the final period, which brought his scoring total to 24, and his continued outclassing of everyone in the league at rebounding by pulling down 17, the humble Bulls had managed to shock Portland. Yet, the Blazers' emphatic response during the series-clinching Game 3 sparked one of the most incredible postseason runs in NBA history, with Bill averaging 18.2 points, 13.7 rebounds, 6 assists, 2.7 blocks, and dunking all over Los Angeles Lakers and former UCLA big man Kareem Abdul-Jabbar during their Western Conference Finals battle. Portland was ready for a brand new challenge, the NBA Finals. However, facing off against the team he refused to be picked by 3 seasons ago, the Philadelphia 76ers, and their brand new superstar Julius Dr. J. Irving, as the clock wound down to 0 in Game 2, Portland found themselves in a hole that was going to be almost impossible to escape from.
When we got back to Portland down 2-0, we were pretty depressed.
But Portland had one unique advantage that no other franchise had.
And Lucas was there. Lucas just waiting for the Dr. Walton pressured in on play.
Fueled by the intense energy provided to them by the screaming Oregon crowd, Bill and the Blazers would go on to achieve something truly incredible. Walton's 22-point Game 3 and 32-point Game 4, plus pulling down a mind-blowing 24 rebounds in Game 5 and 23 in Game 6, had seen his Blazers come back and become the youngest kings of the NBA. And yes, before you go commenting, Oklahoma City was younger in 2025, the Blazers were actually just younger. So anyway, whatever.
I've never coached a better player. I've never coached a better competitor. And I've never coached a better person than Bill Walton.
Giving us fans perhaps one of the funniest and very underrated championship parade moments of all time.
I just want to make sure that the guy that took my bike, I started on my bike today sometime. I want to make sure that guy brings it back to me. I mean, it's like the only bike I have.
As the 1977-1978 season arrived, the now NBA champion and Finals MVP Walton just kept destroying the league. Bill's size was simply too much for anyone to handle defensively. All misses by both his team and their opposition were being cleaned up by the Blazers' big man, and he was showcasing another talent that was far ahead of his time, with the San Diego native slinging passes over, around, through and occasionally under defenses, a skill not yet seen from a player of his size, truly makes you wonder how dominant a player like Bill Walton could have been in today's NBA. Let me know what you think below, by the way, or perhaps share another older player that you believe would have been even more successful if they played today. However, as he ran down the floor during their 50th win of the season against Philadelphia, a burning sensation began deep in his foot, and Bill Walton's life would never be the same. While he would eventually return to begin their title defense against the Seattle Supersonics after pulling down a routine rebound in Game 2, the Blazers season and potentially Bill's NBA career was coming to a close. Despite Bill Walton eventually being awarded the league's most valuable player trophy by his peers, the fact he had snapped a bone in his foot clean in half, and Portland's inability to diagnose the true issue.
My problems were undiagnosed stress fractures. These were cracks in the bones that developed from playing too much basketball.
Taking him to hypnotists and faith healers instead of doctors and surgeons, Walton's time in the NBA was on the brink of ending. Therefore, instead of returning to Oregon for the 1978-1979 season, Bill opted to follow his favorite band, the Grateful Dead, on their tour of Egypt, and then visit the Philippines to climb a 150-foot tree to chase a rare eagle. Can you imagine if any of this happened in today's NBA? Twitter would have a field day. Regardless of these antics, Bill Walton had made his point, and he was ready to start fresh with a new franchise for the 1979-1980 season.
It's my great pleasure to announce that the San Diego Clippers have signed Bill Walton to a 7-year contract.
But despite now representing his hometown NBA team, the same issues remained. Walton would only appear in 14 games for the Clippers during his initial season, and doctors were beginning to fear that Bill's foot issues were so bad that they might have to amputate it. Believing his basketball career was over, Walton looked forward and began to start the next chapter in his life, enrolling at Stanford to study law. However, it was during his studies in which he met a man that completely changed his life. Dr. William Wagner, an orthopedic surgeon, approached the former NBA MVP and offered him a solution: a special surgery which he had only performed on 10 people that had failed every single time. Bill Walton said yes. A decision that, as the 1982-1983 NBA season was rounding out, saw Walton begin to be healthy enough to start training with the Clippers again. At first, just once a week, then twice, then 3 times, before he finally decided to return to the NBA late that season. But with the Clippers, who eventually shifted due to the purchasing of the franchise by Donald Sterling to Los Angeles, failing to ever make the playoffs, Walton, knowing full well his left foot was a ticking time bomb, knew he might only have one more season to get back to the mountaintop. Therefore, he made a call to the man who ran his favorite team of all time.
Called up Red Auerbach and said, "Red, I desperately want to be on your team." And Larry Bird was sitting across the desk from him. And Larry said, "You go get that guy."
I look at the banners each and every time, each and every game, and I look at the retired numbers and look around and see Red Auerbach sitting over there and seeing all the other fans who have been there throughout the entire string of Celtic championships, and to realize that now I'm a part of that. And although we haven't won the championship yet, we think we're going to.
The now 33-year-old, nearly a decade removed from his last fully healthy season, was ready to do anything to help Boston achieve their 16th championship, including being more than willing to be the squad's 6th man, coming off the bench to support the chief, Robert Parrish. But it wasn't just Parrish that Bill was eager to learn from. Because after their first road game in Indiana, Walton begged Boston superstar Larry Bird to take him to his home in French Lick. With Bird obliging this request, the pair arrived at his childhood home and the dirt court that Larry developed his elite game on. So, wanting some good luck, Walton did what anyone would do: stole some of the dirt, and whenever he felt like he needed some good fortune, he would rub it all over himself. A decision that actually seemed to work. Bill would play the most games he ever had in a single campaign, only missing 2 regular season battles, whilst averaging 19.3 minutes, 7.6 points, 6.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, and 1.9 blocks, en route to the Celtics finishing as the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference.
For me to be revitalized, to have that chance once again that I had lost so many years before, that's what made it so special for me.
As Boston began their journey to grab their 3rd championship of the 1980s, they faced heavy resistance, such as 49 and then 63-point games from some second-year shooting guard on the Chicago Bulls during their first-round battle, valiant efforts from the NBA's shortest dunker, Spud Webb, and his Atlanta Hawks, as well as a hard-fought Eastern Conference Finals against the Milwaukee Bucks. However, none of these attempts from their opposition even mattered, as Massachusetts NBA franchise punched their ticket to the finals without losing a single game.
From being told that I would be lucky to even walk without a limp, to being back in the NBA Finals, I mean, it's just it's a tremendous accomplishment.
But the team awaiting them in the championship round was one capable of matching the dominant interior force of the Celtics, as well as their elite outside play, the Hakeem Olajuwon-led Houston Rockets, a squad that not only handed Boston their first postseason loss during Game 3, but one that was mere minutes away from tying the series and potentially grabbing a commanding 3-1 lead at home during their following battle. Yet, with 2 minutes and 39 seconds remaining, in came Celtics head coach Casey Jones' secret weapon.
Walton, who's been there before. Bird for 3 hits, and the Celtics lead by 3, and who else but Larry Bird to get the big basket. They sent Johnson against Wiggins, going in strong. Walton gets the rebound and gets the basket. Bill Walton may have gotten the most important basket after a rebound since he joined the Celtics this year. Reed gets it in low to Hakeem. Double and triple team, fighting through. Loose ball, Ainge winds up with it. Bird, 9 seconds to go, and unless they turn it over, the Celtics will have taken a commanding lead. Walton, and that'll do it. The Celtics, with a big victory, deserve their celebration on the floor.
However, with Olajuwon pouring in 32 points during the two franchises' 5th battle, the Celtics were now on the back foot. While they did hold the commanding 3-2 lead and were set to play Game 6 and the potential Game 7 at home in Boston Garden, the Larry Bird-led side knew another title wasn't just going to fall in their laps.
And to expect anybody to give it to us or let us have it, we got to go out and take it. We got to play very aggressively right from the start and get back and run for 48 long minutes.
Therefore, everyone got to work. Led by Kevin McHale and Bird's respective 29 points each, Larry's additional 12 assists, plus Walton providing a valuable 10 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists off the bench, the Boston Celtics had done it.
And win 50 and lose only 1 on the parquet floor. Bill Walton, it's been a long time since sips of champagne. What does this mean to you?
Oh, it means 63. It means everything to me. Gosh, the amount of work, the amount of pain, just the effort to win in all season long. For 9 long years to get back to this moment is just unbelievable. And I've never been happier, man. I just feel so great. I just love it. And it's been a long way. Houston is too close to New Orleans, but we came out today and we busted in. We love it.
Not only was Walton now a 2-time NBA champion, but he was also crowned the league's 6th Man of the Year, making Bill Walton the only player in league history to have won this award, an MVP, and an NBA Finals MVP. However, while Bill attempted to assist the Celtics during their 1986-1987 title defense, Walton's body would fail him. His right foot, that had remained relatively healthy, began to suffer the same fate as his left, forcing Bill Walton to sit idle, unable to prevent their rivals, the Los Angeles Lakers, from stealing the crowns straight off their heads in the 1987 finals. With Walton ultimately being physically unable to play, the 2-time NBA champion, Finals MVP, and League MVP was forced to medically retire. But Bill remained dedicated to everything he loved, pursuing a career in broadcasting.
Maybe I'll just strip down right here. Bill is taking his shirt off. isn't wearing deodorant.
Whilst also watching his son, Luke, who he named after his former Trailblazer teammate Maurice, not only being drafted into the NBA, but winning 2 NBA championships exactly like his father, and go on to win another one as an assistant coach with the Golden State Warriors. Walton's incredible life, one that should inspire us all to be true to who we are and live life uninhibited by others' opinions and thoughts of our lives, would tragically be cut short after a prolonged battle with cancer in 2024. May Bill Walton forever rest in peace.